To start the plenary session, we request the honorable ministers to take their respective seats. We have Honorable Mohammad Mustafa Mastoor, Deputy Minister for Finance, Afghanistan. We have Honorable Gowher Rizvi, Advisor for International Affairs to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Honorable Lyonpo Namgay Dorji, Finance Minister, Bhutan. Honorable Sharan Mahat, Finance Minister, Nepal. Honorable Sarath Amunugama, International Monetary Cooperation Minister, Sri Lanka. And we request to chair the session. We request Ambassador Sharan. So we request him to conduct and to proceed the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am afraid I am going to be a poor substitute for the Minister of Commerce, who was expected to actually moderate this session, but she has not been able to get away from apparently some cabinet meeting that is taking place. So it falls upon me to try and do the honors for this session. And I'm very grateful to all Excellencies Ministers for being so understanding. And what I have discussed with the ministers here is that instead of having set speeches by each of the ministers, maybe it might be of greater interest if we have more of a conversation amongst ourselves with respect to the prospects for South Asian regional cooperation. In order to start the discussion, what I thought was that each one of our distinguished ministers, I could ask them just a few questions which I think are more relevant to their membership of SAARC. And after they reply, then maybe we can have some more general kind of discussion. So let me start with Excellency Deputy Minister from Afghanistan, who has very kindly joined us at this summit. Excellency, Afghanistan is the newest member of SAARC, and you have just been through a rather difficult political transition. You are still undergoing a security transition, and like several of our member countries, you also confront the problem of cross-border terrorism, which is still continuing. Tell me, sir, what are your expectations of SAARC? What are the ways in which SAARC, for example, can demonstrate its solidarity with Afghanistan? What are the ways in which SAARC could contribute to the peace, stability and prosperity of Afghanistan? And I say this because what happens to Afghanistan has very direct relevance to the peace and stability and prosperity of South Asia itself. So there is a SAARC summit which is coming up in Kathmandu in a few weeks' time. It would be of great interest for all of us to hear your perspective with respect to Afghanistan membership of SAARC. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm honored to be here in the 7th SAARC, in 7th Economic Summit here. And it is very clever of the organizers that just 10 minutes before your speech, they changed the format of the panel. I have a full speech here. And then the question of issues related to the security and peace and stability for a Deputy Minister of Finance is also a good question. Yes, Mr. Sharan, we have had a political transition. We just formed the National Unity Government. Still, we experience insecurity in parts of the country, and sometimes the fear of the new phenomena, ISS and the rest, is also something which we are smelling that. But the good thing, or the opportunity of the new government, with the full backup, with the backup of every voters, it gives us a courage and also hope that we will overcome this problem. But no one living in such a region, no one can do it independently. We are in a region that dependent to every other country. The trust building is something which in every SAARC summit, our President Karzai, in every speech of him, in every summit, he was talking about regional cooperation on counter-terrorism activities as well in the under the SAARC activities. However, we are very active in areas related to the economy, trade, finance, development, but less on the security. The political will of all member countries, particularly when you are saying about cross-border terrorism, and we were just discussing about the incident in Wagah border, which used to be one of the safest areas. It means that unless officials in our countries not cooperate closely, we will have these problems more than before. Once it is reached to our borders, it will affect us. So once again, our new government or new president, who is looking forward to the new summit in Nepal, will stress the issue of security and counter-terrorism strategies. He has had the first outside visit to Saudi Arabia, the second to China, and the third one to Pakistan. And the major part of his agenda was issues how we can improve the security in Afghanistan, and then, because we are living in this region, how we can improve the security and prosperity and stability in the region. But it is always a question whether first address the security issues by militaries or by militaristic approaches, or with more economic integration, you can provide more jobs, alleviate poverty, and then indirectly you help the security. I hope I answered it, but I think if I had my national security advisor here for this question, he would have had a better answer.
Excellency, I did not mean to launch a surprise attack, but I did think that maybe a more interactive conversation amongst ourselves may be of greater interest to our gathering here. And as I said, you are more than welcome, perhaps in the next intervention, if there are things that you would like to say about the economic aspect and the financial aspect. Certainly there will be an occasion to do so. But let me now turn to my very good friend Gowher from Bangladesh. Gowher, Bangladesh is really the founder of SAARC, in a sense, the progenitor of the whole idea of SAARC. And I wanted to ask you, if you look back over the last 3 decades, has SAARC in some way disappointed your expectations? Has it achieved something of what you had in mind when you put forward this very, very important and historic idea in front of us? And you have also been very deeply engaged in a major exercise which is being undertaken, of which both you and I are a part, where how do we really take the level of cooperation amongst South Asian countries to a different level, what is the kind of environment which we can create together for that? And if you recall, one of the things that we focused on was, what is it that is special to South Asia, which is not special in terms of our relations with other countries? And we homed in on the aspect of proximity, that what South Asian countries enjoy amongst themselves is that great asset of proximity, which actually should be leveraged in terms of encouraging regional cooperation. And this is something which we have been talking about, how in a new context, the new context being that today we are really a community of very vibrant democracies. All the 8 South Asian countries, and also that we have a somewhat new environment, both in the region, but also globally. And I think there is also a sense, I think Professor Farooq Sobhan pointed out, that if we do not get our act together, we are going to be left behind. So that's also a very important reason why we should really be getting our act together. So any thoughts that you have to offer in this respect?
Thank you so much, Shambhai. Allow me to be a little bit candid. I won't say we are disappointed, because we have abiding faith in the benefits and the possibilities of regional cooperation. And especially since you, in your introductory statement earlier this afternoon, very objectively gave us a list of all the achievements of SARC. So that is already on record, so I don't have to repeat. But the reality is, there is reason to be disappointed. I sometimes feel we are much too reticent, much too timid. We are not willing to take a bold step forward, while the people of the region are ready, and all the objective conditions for cooperation and the benefits that the cooperation is available there. Let me go further. I mean, you know, what our region offers, other regions cannot dream of. It is enviable, our sense of community. We are a community in every sense of the word. We have a shared history. We have a culture, music, history built over a long period of time, over 1,000 years. And we have so much we share, and in everything, in all fields of human endeavor, we have shared fingerprints. So with that sort of a shared historic past, shared cultural affinity, and shared difficulties, and shared aspirations for the future, the fact that we have not gone as far as we should really is a deep concern to all of us in South Asia, and very much so in Bangladesh. You quite rightly, Shambhai, said we fritter away our greatest assets. We point to minor differences and show how different we are. Tell me a country which doesn't have the differences within the country that exist in this region. Where are those differences not there? Yet we will choose to focus on the differences rather than on the historic advantages that we have. Second thing, you're quite rightly, there's a compelling reasons, compelling circumstances for us to come to cooperate. Otherwise, as Rahman Bhai very rightly said, we are already, and I hate to say, becoming the laughing stock of our neighbors. Look at the Southeastern nations, how far they have gone. We are left behind. We are left behind in poverty. We lead in poverty. We lead in illiteracy. We lead in all sorts of indicators with which we would not want to be identified. Yet, as you said, and I really reiterate, we don't take advantage of the proximity. We had an integrated communication system. We have shared rivers through which we travel from one place to another. We had an economy that was so complementary. We are going, while the rest of the world is building these infrastructure, transport network, we are refusing to reinstate what we undid. Now, all these railway connections were there. We undid it in 1965. We will not reinstate it, or we are reinstating it very soon. And by using our proximity, the competitive advantage that South Asia would enjoy, both within South Asia, which is a vast market, also globally, defies imagination. So that is one compulsion. Second compulsion, of course, is our security. Instead of seeing that security lies within working as a community, we create a sense of artificial insecurity. I mean, security, the question of security in South Asia is not defined in terms of external threats. It is understood in terms of internal vulnerabilities. And to address those vulnerabilities, we need to work as a region. All the problems that we can talk about in South Asia, none of them are capable of being resolved, whether it is poverty, terrorism, ecological disaster, global warming, anything, you name it, are not to be resolved by confrontation. They can only be addressed by cooperation. No country has it within itself to address these issues unilaterally and from within a national boundaries. So, security lies in our working together, not in confronting each other. In the same way, whatever we want to achieve requires us to come together. And there is another thing which I will say it since we are sitting here in New Delhi today, and I hope it will not go remiss, is today one of the great thing that has really changed and is in a way helping us to move forward is the changed attitude of India itself. We all remember in the early days of SAARC, there was a reticence on the part of India. India came along. India did not oppose SAARC, but it did not provide the leadership, it did not provide the support that was required. Today, India's position itself has changed. India has become, the very fact that Ministry of External Affairs is today co-sponsoring this meeting shows how far India has come forward. And with that additional impetus, I do not believe that there are any further impediments. We have already talked very, very coherently about the fact that we are now a society of democracies, a community of democracies. We are all struggling with the same sort of issues. And I agree with you, SAARC Secretariat over the years has achieved very considerably. But that said, I also feel it is miserably lagging behind. I hate to use this word, but this is the truth. It is miserably lagging behind because it has failed to capitalize on the soul of our society. There is a South Asian soul. There is a South Asian community. There is a South Asian history which binds our people together. And we are locked instead in sterile bureaucratic haggling and discussion. So I really think the people of South Asia are ahead of us. The governments are not keeping in pace with what the people of South Asia want, and our South Asian SAARC Secretariat should move out from minor bilateral thing, is to create a harmonized South Asia, remove the obstacles, remove the impediments, standardize, create standards which are applicable, remove these non-tariff barriers, etc., so that we can realize. So what I really want to say is, we are happy the way it is going, but we are far from satisfied, because the real potential lies in our recreating of our South Asia community, which we had all dreamt of.
Thank you very much, Gowher. Let me extend a very warm welcome to Minister Amunugama from Sri Lanka, who has just joined us. I just wanted to fill you in, Mr. Minister. This is supposed to be an interactive session amongst the ministers who have joined us for this summit. Our Minister of Commerce has not arrived because she's still in a cabinet meeting, so I took the onus on myself to conduct this or moderate this meeting. So I hope you won't mind. I was telling them I'm a poor substitute, but I hope you will bear with me. So what I was doing was to ask each one of our very honorable ministers their perspective with respect to SAARC and how do we take this forward. So I will come to you as well. What Gowher has pointed out, I think, has a great deal of merit in it, because I think he has very rightly put his finger on what is really required, and which is a change in mindset. I think looking at SAARC from a different perspective of not only looking at negative things that we have to remove, but what are the ways in which we can leverage the positive things that really bring us together. And proximity, as I said, is really the big asset which South Asia has. And to try and see how we can build on that is something very important. We also, I would also like to just reinforce the point that he made about India's own attitude. Let me be very honest, and you pointed to the bureaucrats who sometimes stand in the way. Certainly, at the time that SAARC came into existence, there were reservations amongst many people in India, who some thought that this was like a ganging up of smaller neighbors against India. There was some kind of a siege mentality in a sense. But, you know, I think since the last 20 years or more, starting from the economic liberalization and globalization of the Indian economy, a more confident India. I think that's an important aspect of this, that there's a more confident, a more self-assured India, which has come to the conclusion that even if India wishes to have a stronger link with the rest of Asia, wants to have a stronger integration with the global economy, any sense that you can somehow or the other transcend South Asia and build up those kind of linkages is simply not possible. That India can move forward only together with its neighbors, rather than India somehow or the other going past its neighbors. I think that attitude is very much now of the past. So I think if there is something that India is struggling with today, is having recognized that, how do you take this forward? We recognize that India has to be, in a sense, a prime mover in this process. But how India can make this happen together with our neighbors is really the challenge which we face. Let me now turn to Minister from Bhutan. In a sense, Bhutan is a model of a South Asian country which has made very judicious use of its hydropower resources to transform its own economic prospects. It is a long-term energy partner for India, and also now with several other countries in the sub-region. We are looking at a sub-region which includes Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh and India as a precursor to what could become an energy grid for the whole of South Asia. There had been some promising developments also in this respect between India and Pakistan, and we do hope that we can resume that as well. The other aspect which also is very important and significant is that Bhutan has been also very successful in making certain that its development strategy is ecologically sustainable. And I think that's a very important aspect today for this region, which is facing a major ecological challenge, the threat of climate change. As you may be aware, that 72% of Bhutan's land area is currently under forest. And in fact, its constitution lays down that at least 60% of the land area of the country must always be under forest. And that, I think, is an extremely important aspect. So, Excellency, I would like to ask you, how do you, from your experience, and the fact that today, the South Asia Development Fund is actually located in Thimphu. It is supposed to finance a lot of the programs and projects in the SAARC region. How do you see the SAARC being a platform on which we can perhaps pursue the kind of energy partnership which is already a fact of life between India and Bhutan and in the sub-region, as I mentioned. And also if you have thoughts about the ecological aspect, because several people in the earlier meetings have in fact focused attention on how big a challenge climate change is going to become for this region. So as we go forward to the next 18th SAARC summit, do you have any perspectives that perhaps you could share with us? Excellency.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor for me and my delegation to attend the 7th South Asia Economic Summit, and for which I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Chairman for inviting us. Ambassador Sharan has just very briefly taken through how Bhutan is persevering on our economic policy. As he said, Bhutan, and as you know, is a landlocked country, and the only source of income, or the major source of income which His Majesty has actually planned, is on the hydropower. In fact, Your Excellencies will agree with me that besides the hydropower, we also give a lot of importance to the high-end tourism. And of the total annual revenue, about 27% of revenue is from the hydropower. We have a plan to target at least 10,000 megawatt by 2020. But recently, we also have some issues with the current account deficit. The country is running through a huge current account deficit, mainly contributed by the import, because we are an import driven economy, because we import almost everything, and in the institutions or the starting of the hydropower has also played a very important or the major contributing factor to the current account deficit. So we have now taken a slow step. Right now we have about 3,000 megawatt hydropower project undergoing and under construction. And the plan of achieving 10,000 megawatt is been perceived, but because of this huge current account deficit, this will take quite some time, and the government is to review this policy so that we are able to overcome the challenges of this current account deficit. As far as SDF is concerned, although we are a small country, we had the privilege and we are honored to host this important institution in our country. And then as of now, this has taken off with a very good start. And then there's a huge number of projects that has benefited the host country and even within the region of the SAARC. As far as our country is concerned, we support this policy, and we would like to support this important institution. And then we would hope in future that this important institution will play a very important role within the SAARC region. On the third front, as Chairman has just said, the aspiration of our country, or my country rather, in the forthcoming SAARC summit. Well, Bhutan is extremely excited for this coming SAARC summit. After assuming and after the recent election in India, His Excellency the Prime Minister of India has taken a very broad approach, and then he has in fact taken a bold step, and then we are very hopeful that his leadership would play a very important role in taking the SAARC region to greater heights. And we are very hopeful that, and we are looking forward to the SAARC summit, where he is going to play an important role, so that it's going to make a difference in the SAARC region.
Would you like to? Yeah.
In addition to what Excellency Minister Dorji mentioned, we should not only looking within the region and the potential within the region particularly on the energy sector. What I want to mention here is that what we can look out of the region, particularly the Central Asian countries, which are having a surplus in the energy, and compared to our region, which in 15 years the energy demand will be threefold. What we can do to bring their energy and power cheaper and sooner, and to not only have financial rewards, but also create more employment and prosperity and stability in the region. We're already working on several mega projects. I'm very happy that in the third day of this summit, we have a presentation on CASA project. CASA is a Central Asia, South Asia project, transfer of energy or electricity from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan through Afghanistan to Pakistan. It's a 1,300 megawatt. We're also working on TAPI. Luckily, on both of these projects, I used to be a chief negotiator from Afghanistan side. Even in one stage, Bangladesh was interested to be connected with TAPI, We progressed well. However, there are some more steps to be taken. We have cheap energy in that side. How we can bring it here? We cannot work only on the domestic potentials. In the meantime, there is another project which we laid a concept that is a two-tap project, which connects the electricity or the grid between Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. It is altogether 2,600 megawatts. Some of these projects looks very ambitious, but CASA already happened. Just in last month, the ministers of finance of these 4 countries, they signed the pricing and the other agreements in Washington during the annual meeting with the World Bank. It means that they are possible. So I'm saying that for energy demand of South Asia, we should also look beyond the region, and inter-regional energy trade is also another possible potential.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for your intervention and for pointing out the prospects for really contributing to the energy security of our region by tapping also extra regional sources. I would only like to add that our ability to do this would be far better if we ourselves are more integrated. So if there was an energy grid or a power grid in South Asia, then our tapping into these sources would become that much easier. And perhaps our bargaining power would be a little better if, in fact, we were able to negotiate as a region rather than as separate countries. Really the kind of vision of not only a power grid, but some kind of a grid of even gas pipelines or oil pipelines, which really knit the region together. If we have that, then tapping into sources both east and west of the region would become that much easier. So I think one of the themes, as you said, is looking at the energy issue as it relates to South Asia. I think this is something which really should be a issue of great attention from all these South Asian countries. So thank you for bringing that aspect in. Minister from Bhutan. One of the things I forgot to mention is that Bhutan also took the lead in shaping the action plan on climate change. Not many people know that actually there is a action plan on climate change. Because people have raised the issue, and Ambassador Kaka Kehla had raised this issue earlier in the morning, that big elephant in the room is really climate change. And many of the challenges we talk about today will fade into insignificance when we look at the emergency that both, not only the region, but what the planet faces in terms of climate change. So that's well taken. But I would just like to point out that Bhutan was one of the first countries to actually take the lead in this respect. And if I'm not mistaken, in the summit which was held in Thimphu, there was a declaration of the leaders of the SAARC countries on climate change, and a fairly detailed action plan was also drawn up, and it was released. I think, like many other that Gowher Bhai referred to, we do have plans, but we don't seem to have the energy to take these forward, and I think that is what we really need to address. Because there is no shortage of very ambitious declarations and aspirations that have been expressed in the past, but we have not been able to really realize them in practice. Let me now turn to Minister Sharan Mahat, who's a very old friend from my days in Kathmandu. Very great privilege to invite you here and to have your presence amongst us. Again, Nepal has been one of the most enthusiastic champions, really, of South Asia regional cooperation, and SAARC in particular. It is no accident that the SAARC Secretariat is actually located in Kathmandu. And this was with the vision of Kathmandu becoming the center for a lot of the thinking, lot of the action on issues of and projects of regional cooperation. So Nepal has a very special place in terms of what we are talking about here. And of course, most importantly, the next SAARC summit in a couple of weeks' time is going to be held in Kathmandu, in Nepal. And therefore, Minister Mahat's perspective will be of particular interest, I think, to all of us here. Let me just point out this is something of a personal observation. When I was in Nepal, one of the things that I always used to try and put forward is that, in my view, if there is one South Asian country which has the potential of emerging as the richest country in South Asia, it is perhaps Nepal. It has all the intangible assets in terms of a country which has some of the most breathtaking landscape, some of the best climate that you can think of, some of the richest culture that you can see in South Asia. No matter what aspect you are looking at, Nepal actually has assets which no other country in the region has. And of course, in terms of tangible assets, it has hydropower resources which are of a bigger scale than Bhutan has. It has also, in terms of, mention was made of the potential that Bhutan has for tourism. Nepal has huge tourist industry. So here is a country which actually is a champion of SAARC, but also a country which actually has all the assets which can really drive the process of economic development and prosperity in the region. I think Nepal's perspective on how it looks at the future of regional cooperation in terms of contributing to this development, and what you see, Mr. Minister, as some of the prospects for the forthcoming SAARC summit, it would be of great interest, I think, to all of us assembled here. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador Sharan, for inviting us by delegation to this event. And coming from Kathmandu, which is hosting SAARC summit in about 3 weeks' time, this particular event we attach much importance, because your conclusions, your findings, your recommendations, I think, would have a bearing on the forthcoming SAARC summit. I thank you very much. First of all, my own assessment about SAARC regional integration and even towards South Asian Economic Union, which is the main subject of discussion today and tomorrow. If we look over the past, despite what may be saying, speaking to take satisfaction in our past, frankly speaking, the progress so far has been one of disappointment. Even if we say the regional integration in South Asia is not satisfactory, it would be a huge understatement. We account for, our inter-regional trade accounts for 5% of the total trade of South Asia. That figure speaks for itself. And the cost of trade within South Asia is higher than the cost of trade with Latin America. India and Pakistan alone accounts for 90% of the SAARC economy. But the cost of trade within the two countries is 2 times the cost of trade between China and America, USA. So that speaks for itself about what we have achieved so far. Look at our institutions, regional institutions, regional centers. Everybody says not functioning well. Secretariat is weak. Trade is low. Our intra-regional investment is less than 7% of the total investment in the region. So the progress so far, I think it is far from satisfactory. But having said that, I don't underestimate the future, prospect for future. The force of economic development that is taking place in the region and close to the region. When I think it took 150 years for UK to double its GDP. USA took 50 years. India took 16 years. China took 12 years to double its GDP. And when USA and UK was doubling their economy, the take-off time, their population was 100 million. India and China has 1 billion each, 100 crores each. That shows the force of the economic force that the economic development is taking place, the growth is taking place in India and China, which could have far-reaching implications for the economy. We are talking of an economic force not less than the force of industrial revolution. It is a great possibility. So where do we go from here? I think several things we have to consider, focus on. Over the past decades, we have been trying to touch too many sectors. We have practically touched each aspect of economic and social life in our SAARC declarations. And we have not been doing justice to any of them. So let us talk on few core areas which could pave the way, which could accelerate the integration process rather than too many things. In the past, we have talked very tall but delivered very little. Let us talk on really key and strategic issues. I think first we have to lower the cost of trade. Cost of trade, I said, is very high in South Asia, within South Asia, unless and until we lower the cost of trade, economic integration would be a pipe dream. Secondly, you have to be competitive, globally competitive. At the moment, we are riddled with the poor man's consortium. SAARC is like a poor man's consortium, riddled with a long list of sensitive lists and, para-tariff and non-tariff barriers. Even the, this is too much. You have to be globally competitive in this world. You have to make a place in the Committee of Nations. Look at the cost of doing business. World Bank does a survey, annual survey of, doing business survey. Our position is somewhere between 89 and 183, something like that. While in Rwanda, a post-conflict country, its place is 49th. Now South Asia's ranges between, I think the lowest is Sri Lanka, very favorable atmosphere, 89. And the highest is Afghanistan, 193 in the total of 189 countries. This is too much. You have to lower the cost of doing business, and you have to be a global investment center, a global global hub for investment in industrial activity. Another point I am worried about is the manufacturing sector. It is declining. Historically speaking, if you see the experience of other countries, when your industrial employment reaches 30% or more, then it starts declining. But now in South Asia, it is declining already. India's manufacturing sector employment has started declining, I am told, after reaching 13%. Nepal's after reaching 9%. So I think unless you become competitive, your manufacturing sector expands and become globally competitive, you can do very little. And another point I would like to focus is, as mentioned before by other colleagues, regional connectivity, real highways, investment corridors, economic corridors. I think this is where I think we have complementarities, particularly in the energy sector. As Ambassador Sharan mentioned, Nepal has huge potential for energy development, clean energy, at a time when we are talking of climate change and all this, emission problem. The prospect of clean energy is very tantalizing. We have hardly tapped 1% of our potential, giving us huge possibility in future. And also, the complementarity that exists within the region. Like India, Bangladesh rich in coal, gas, Nepal, Bhutan rich in hydro potential. I think coal, gas can provide the base, cover the base load, and for the peaking load, I think with dams, hydro energy can fit the bill. I think there is a huge complementarity, particularly as far as the energy, because of the diverse energy sources is concerned, to optimize its use. And there must be free trade area, particularly for the energy trading. We should go for energy trading as a common market. Recently, we signed power trade agreement with India, I think, which provides the framework of a common market principle as far as power trading, energy trading is concerned. Without this agreement, we had very limited market. Investors were looking for market. Nepal's market is very small. But with Indian market now opened up as a result of this power trade agreement, investment could be attracted. That is where I think we must be working. This region has huge clean energy potential. And from Nepal's perspective, I always say that Nepal can be a powerhouse of clean energy at a time when we are suffering from emission problem, climate change, and rising temperature. Our Minister Excellency from Bhutan mentioned about climate change. We are a region which is paying very heavy price because of the climate change. Look at what happened to Nepal this time. Flood, landslide, torrential rain took away hundreds of lives. 25,000 families have been displaced now, living in camps at the moment in western Nepal. While there was drought in some other parts of Nepal, the occurrence of drought side by side with huge rainfall, taking place side by side because of the impact of climate change, for which we are not to blame. We have not industrialized ourselves. Industrialization in China, industrialization in India is taking a toll, I think, on the Himalayas. And this is something which this problem cannot tackle unilaterally. Our agricultural cycle is changing. The snow line is going down, as a result of which the settlement in the Himalayas is changing. I think this is a very serious problem on which not just cooperation within South Asian region is necessary, but you have to tackle the problem at a global stage. So I think, as I look at future, I think it is more connectivity, reducing the trading cost, being competitive, and going towards the economic union. I think before you go to economic union, SAFTA must be fully operational, fully functional. Without SAFTA being fully operational, functional, going to economic union would be difficult and would be a pipe dream. And I would see even a customs union, I would see even monetary union, common currency, and these are the targets we should be looking for. But for that, we have to sort out many other issues. The first thing is, as Mr. Gowher, Rizvi mentioned, what is your agenda? Is prosperity or security? Prosperity agenda should replace the obsession with security agenda. And this alone can push the SAARC integration forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I think you have put, the whole challenge before us in very, very good perspective. Certainly, I think we look forward to the day that, Nepal does emerge as the powerhouse for South Asia, because I find it very strange that it is India which is selling power to Nepal and not the other way around. And I think the sooner we bring about a change in this respect, the better it would be. You also mentioned the fact that, we are already suffering from the impacts of climate change, whether it is in terms of extreme climatic events, torrential rain in one area, droughts in other areas. Bhutan, Nepal, India, and even Afghanistan, even though Bangladesh doesn't have a immediate sort of border with the Himalayas, but it is very much impacted by what happens in the Himalayas. So we share this magnificent mountain range, which is also, in a sense, the water tower of Asia. Not only just for South Asia, because there are rivers which also go as far as Vietnam from the Himalayas. Therefore, preserving the very fragile ecology of the Himalayas is something which is of great concern to us. There are glacial lakes which are forming in many parts of the Himalayas. I think Bhutan itself has been affected by some of those glacial lake outbursts which have taken place. And there are several others which are developing. The Prime Minister of India has talked about a SARC satellite. And I hope that is a proposal which can go forward. But I would also like to mention here that because we do have some capability, space-based capabilities, we do have, in fact, a very good sort of imagery available of the entire Himalayan range. And I think it would be very, very in a spirit of cooperation. I think we should share that with the other countries, because I think it is of great importance to all of us. The other aspect, as you mentioned, torrential rain. Over the last few years, we have set up these automatic weather stations along the entire eastern coast of India, which is very much impacted by these cyclones and stormy weather. And these automatic weather stations have greatly helped us in, number one, having early warning for some of these kind of extreme climatic events which take place, and allowing people who are affected by these extreme climate events to be moved to safer places, particularly from the coastal areas. Also to minimize the damage to life and property in these areas. We would be very happy, I think, to extend this facility to other South Asian countries. But that brings me back to sometimes what stands in the way of actually taking such kind of proposals forward, and which is the lack of trust which you mentioned, Minister. That many of these things we are unable to take forward because there is still a residue of mistrust amongst the countries in the region. And I think we have to somehow or the other address that issue. So perhaps in the second round we can look at that. But now let me turn to a distinguished minister from Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka has a very special place in terms of SAARC cooperation, because it is an island country like Maldives. So some of its challenges are somewhat different from other SAARC countries. But Sri Lanka also has been a very, very big champion of cooperation, regional cooperation in SAARC. And one of the earliest free trade agreements that India had in the region was with, in fact, Sri Lanka. And if I'm not mistaken, the experience with that free trade agreement has actually been very positive. To a certain extent, there is some kind of an economic integration taking place between Sri Lanka and the southern states of India. There are Sri Lankan companies which are also investing in India. That is something which is very, very remarkable. And a lot of economic linkages have actually developed between the two countries. Trade deficit remains, but both exports of Sri Lanka and of India have actually gone up in the meantime. So this is a very good example for a wider free trade agreement that we have in the region, that there are pluses more than minuses if we move in that direction. Also, with respect to the transport network, one of the things that we have been talking about is to see whether we can revive the old, shipping line which used to go right around the coast of India and also covering Sri Lanka. And it used to be a very important aspect of the regional trade amongst the countries of the region, and cheaper transport costs. They are always cheaper than land transportation. And Sri Lanka, of course, for India is very important because Colombo port is the most important port in terms of transshipment of India-related cargo. Sri Lanka too has, I think, a very important role to play in terms of taking our cooperation forward. So, Mr. Minister, your perspectives on this would be of great interest to us, particularly how you see the next SAARC summit. What is it that we should be focusing on? You have the floor, sir.
Chairman, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying that I'm very happy to be here for this very important meeting, particularly after Prime Minister Modi, I think, repositioned SAARC by placing a great deal of emphasis, I would say even a sort of affectionate emphasis on the neighboring countries and in the SAARC relationship. So we see a sort of new dynamism, opening up of new potentialities, which I think the new Indian government will pursue. If you look at the history of SAARC, we can say that there is a mixed report card. There are many good factors, many factors which could have been much better. But let me first begin with the positives. I think we have to be very conscious of the fact that because of SAARC, whatever mistrust and so on has been talked about, we still have created a sense of identity. We have a fellow feeling in international fora, or when we go to the IMF and the World Bank or the regional banks, there is a feeling that we are sort of politico-economic group. We have many things in common. We can present a common front on many of these issues. So certainly, because we had SAARC, I think we have established a sort of inner feeling, a sort of identity which did not exist before. Of course, there was the old British India and so on. But since that time, we have created a new identity, and I think SAARC deserves a lot of credit for that. Number two is that at the people-to-people level, if you take my country, the number of tourists arriving in Sri Lanka from SAARC countries, principally India, of course, but also the other SAARC countries, they are figuring as the biggest group of arrivals to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has over 150 connections to India, and the type of people-to-people contact, particularly with the southern states that you mentioned, has increased. Not simply on the political level, but because people find good business. A lot of travel agents, a lot of airlines, a lot of hotels. Normally when we talk of these political and security concerns, we forget the fact that people-to-people contact has been very much enhanced because the sense of comfort that we have as SAARC people. Now we are at the Oberoi here. I remember the first big hotel venture in Sri Lanka was managed by Vicky Oberoi and the Oberoi Group. So even today when people want to find a word for a hotel in the local language, they call it an Oberoi. When they want to talk of a three-wheeler, they call it a Bajaj. So this sort of linkages we must not forget. I think those are very positive factors. If you talk to people in our region, and I think this is true of most countries, irrespective of other political and other concerns, there is a feeling that we are of one group, that we can work together. These are very positive factors. Then also the free trade agreements. I'm not going to describe the FTAs as sort of ideal types. There are a lot of problems, but we have made progress. Now take for example, while SAFTA and so on is still being talked about, discussed, its contours being debated, the bilateral arrangements, if I may talk about the Sri Lanka-India FTA, by and large it's a great success. It's a success for India, obviously. It's also a success for Sri Lanka. Now if you look at the automobiles in Sri Lanka, by far they are all of Indian manufacture. If you look at three-wheelers, bicycles, motorcycles, there's been, I would say, a wave of Indian exports to Sri Lanka of that level. So that has been quite a success. Sri Lankan exports to India also have increased. There have been ups and downs, there have been controversies. For example, some people have tried to use the Sri Lankan base to enter into the Indian market and try to sort of evade the tariff structure here and so on. There have been blips like that, but basically it has worked. Today I was told, for example, that a huge order for Sri Lanka made bicycles, not even motorcycles, just push bicycles, have been signed from Sri Lanka to be sent to India. So we have to remember that this is all developing. So the free trade agreements, I think, need to be refined. Now we have to look back at this. Many of the earlier concerns have been allayed, but some concerns still remain. So I think we have to make a much more serious attempt to analyze what has gone on and also to rectify some of those obviously difficult areas that we have identified. Now whether we like it or not, if you analyze SAARC and compare it with the other regional groupings, one cannot escape the fact that India is the dominant part. I mean, we may not want to articulate it, some may want to sort of go around it and all that, but that's a fact. If you look at the population, if you look at the wealth of the country, if you look at the scientific cadre, I mean, the recent advances in Indian science and technology can only benefit its neighbors. So I think largely this relationship, instead of trying to have this sort of idealistic type of situation, it may be better to understand the reality of this. India also has made several changes. I mean, in the past, for example, this notion of reciprocity was there. That is, I mean, you can't really compare the amount of imports that could go from Sri Lanka to India with what could come from India to Sri Lanka. I mean, that type of reciprocity, fortunately, has now been removed. But one thing is clear, with the recent downturn of the American and Western economies, of course, there's a slight recovery of the American economy, the realities of manufacture, the realities of trade became apparent. When everything went off well, when you could sell easily, China sold easily, India sold easily, the Far Eastern countries sold easily, everybody didn't really focus on the problems that could arise. But with the downturn, the sense of competition and the sense of trying to find alternatives to this crisis situation. You had the dip in growth rates, for example, the dip in sales of your manufactured commodities. So then people had to think again. You think of the domestic market. Now one common factor, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, all of us, we have very small domestic markets. So in reality, SAARC means that we have to look at the Indian market. We have to look at this, one of the biggest markets in the world. So we ask the question now, being in SAARC, cannot we have a more advantageous regime as far as the Indian market is concerned? I must say, we have made progress. For example, Sri Lanka is very well known for its garment industry. In fact, some of our people have even now come and set up their manufacturing plants in India. We are a top niche market. It's about the second or third biggest foreign exchange earner for Sri Lanka. But we were able to negotiate with India, and India very generously provided quotas. When we had problems with GSP, with Europe and so on, we had certain quotas fixed for us from India. I must say, bigger quotas are now being fixed by China also. But anyway, with this downturn, the realities of manufacture, the realities of the SAARC market really became manifest. I think we can't pussyfoot around that. Today the global economy is changing. It's highly competitive. And you have to think of comparative advantage. So, sort of trying to be nice to younger brother type of approach, how is it viable in this highly competitive global environment? I think we have to take a much more tough, hard look at all these problems. That period when one could sort of accommodate, to help the other SAARC countries to move forward. I don't think that's going to wash very much in the future. Those SAARC countries must be able to produce things. Their products must be able to be globally competitive, as Ram simply said. Just because we are in SAARC or whether we have FTA, that can only be a palliative. It can only ameliorate a situation. But when the chips are down, your products, our products, have to be globally competitive. This is a very poor substitute. Now take the example of Sri Lankan garments. We are highly competitive in the top end. We can take on anybody, but not in every item. So one has to, I think, look at the hard facts of modern global economics. And no longer can we depend on goodwill, on accommodation, and even quotas. That may be all right at some time, but that is not going to work in the future. So that aspect of the FTAs, how it is going to work, how our economic relations are going to work, has to be rethought out. And principally, I think it will be the inter se position regarding the growing market of India. For a country like Sri Lanka, we also, because of our geographical position and so on, I must say frankly, India is not the only market. We also have access to another big market, the Chinese market. So one has to exercise one's flexibility in trying to exploit the market, because this is a dog-eat-dog situation when it comes to economies. There's no sort of handouts in this business. So that is one. Then the next aspect, of course, is the security elements, which is of great concern to Sri Lanka. We have to say that the security situation in Asia is changing, particularly as far as the seas are concerned. Now, this has not really been taken up as a SAARC matter, because most of the SAARC countries don't have this problem. But Sri Lanka does, Maldives has, India has. Because the Indian Ocean, which was a colonial pond, a British pond in the past, is today a major focus of contention. Some of the world's biggest navies are fooling around in the Chinese Navy is a huge, Indian Navy is a world-class Navy now. The US Navy, all the world's biggest navies are interested in the Indian Ocean. You can't deny it. You have, for example, if you take Sri Lanka, this is something which is not realized. Exactly 65% of the global sea traffic, and I don't mean any qualification, all global sea traffic, Atlantic, Pacific, everything. 65% of it goes by our new port, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, because it's taking oil. It's taking oil to Japan, it's taking oil to every single tanker that is taking oil to the Far East is going past Sri Lanka. And every 6 minutes, a giant tanker is going past our port. So shouldn't we take advantage of that? So those are the new realities in the security situation. And I for one, thank God that SAARC is there, because we can have a dialogue. Otherwise, if it was only a bilateral matter, things can get out of hand. So we are seeing a fast evolving global economic scenario, a fast evolving regional and global security scenario. So my question is, can this elephantine SAARC, can it tackle this situation? Can it move fast? Can it, or will it amble along like the Candy Perahera, taking its own cool time, discussing these things? Because these are hot issues, red hot issues, which have to be tackled at a much more vital level, much more, shall I say, urgent level. So my question is, while all this is true enough, while the plus factors are very much there, our sense of camaraderie and common relationship is there, I have great doubts whether we can act as a sort of firefighting, whether we can act fast enough as a SAARC group to meet the contingencies and the emerging problems in political, economic and security matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I think we have just a few minutes left, and we have the cultural program which will begin at 6:30. So any final thoughts from any of the Minister? Gowher, would you like to?
It was a fascinating discussion, and thank you. As I hear, and we have all heard, how many things we haven't done or how bad things are, but I am still convinced that we have a very stark choice. We can go on making the mistakes of the past, we can go on beggaring each other, or recognizing that the way forward is through cooperation. Because no matter what we do, we talked about energy. The way these surplus, enormous energies that exist can only be developed and marketed and used through regional cooperation. The vast hydroelectric resources in the northeast of India can only be developed if it goes through Bangladesh. So we must come to recognize that this is not an option, it is a necessity. Likewise, we have all talked about trade and the importance of reducing the cost of trading depends on connectivity. This again will not happen unless we come and cooperate together. We talked about ecology, we talked about environment, global warming, and scarcity of water. Unless we learn to manage and harness water together. So what I'm really saying is, our survival depends on cooperation and developing. And this is best done if we develop as a community, recognize the mistakes of our past, but not be so burdened with the mistakes of the past that we can see no hope in the future. And that's what I want to leave with, is that for us, the choices are stark. We must choose either to remain forever and ever mired in poverty, or come together and step into a prosperous South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gowher. Any of the other excellencies, would you like to say a few final words before we conclude? Minister Mahat?
With this free trade taking place, I think the problem of smaller economies like ours, Bhutan, Maldives, and I know Sri Lanka is more competitive. I think we have a serious problem. With dismantling of our, customs tariff, we are losing heavily. And our import is ballooning, export is declining. So competitiveness for smaller economies in the regional trading is becoming very tough. Our export-import ratio from a level of 60% has now gone down to 12%. It is a very serious problem. Thanks to the inflow of remittances, economy is surviving. Foreign exchange reserve is comfortable. But if you see only balance of trade, export-import ratio is come down to 12-13%. So unless there is production sharing, part of the regional value chain, smaller economies must be brought into picture as part of the regional value chain, production sharing. I think this is something that should be given strong consideration in future. This is important from the perspective of smaller economies particularly.
No, I think, Mr. Mahat, you have drawn attention to a very important problem. I think the interests of the smaller countries of the region must be accommodated within any kind of vision we have for the future of this region. Let me conclude by thanking each and every one of our ministers. Please give them a big hand because, as I said, this was slightly unusual. Because I think all our ministers did have some written speeches. I did try to take them out of their comfort zone so that we could have a much more frank and much more interesting discussion. And I think all of you will agree that as a result we have actually had a very, very substantive and very, very interesting discussion. So thank you all our ministers for being so cooperative in taking part in this interaction. Let me also say that many of the things that have come out as a result of this interaction will actually be very important inputs in terms of how we approach the next summit, what are the kind of things that we focus on, because I think here you have heard really what are the key issues that we should be focusing on. What are the concerns of the various countries in the region. And they are not all the same concerns. So I think we have to find a way in which the differing concerns of our member countries can somehow be brought onto the same platform. I have no doubt that as a result of this, we will have a much more fruitful and much more substantive discussion in the next couple of days. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you. As I mentioned, we are going to assemble here at 6:30. There is a very nice cultural program which has been organized for all of you, and immediately after that you are all invited to dinner that I'll be hosting also in the same venue. Thank you very much.